Her scream broke the silence of the bar. It wasn't loud. It wasn't wild or desperate. It was short and thin, like something torn loose by accident. But it was the kind of sound that made men pause mid-drink, mid-laugh, mid-breath. For a heartbeat, even the Broken Will saloon seemed unsure of itself. Clara Reed was on her knees on the dusty wooden floor. Her wrists were tied so tightly the rope had burned into her skin. Dirt and dried blood clung to her arms, her legs, her face. Her shirt, once pale blue, hung torn and useless from her shoulders, barely covering her shaking body. Every inch of her told a story she hadn't chosen to tell. Dark bruises bloomed along her hips. Her knees were scraped raw and crusted with blood. A fresh cut near her temple still leaked, the thin red line slipping down her cheek. She looked 19. Maybe less. But her eyes looked older than most of the men in the room. They held a kind of fear that came only from learning too early how cruel the world could be. The crowd watched her like a pack of hungry wolves. The air inside the saloon was thick, alcohol, sweat, dust, and something darker beneath it all. The owner of the Broken Will, Vince Malone, leaned back in his chair, smiling as he slapped his hand against the table. $30 to start, he announced. His voice rolled easily through the room. This one's pure, he added, loud enough to be heard over the rising noise. Never been touched. Laughter exploded around her. Coins clinked in pockets. Chairs scraped against the floor. Someone whistled. 40, a man shouted. 50, another yelled. Clara tried to cover herself, but the rope only cut deeper into her wrists. Her breath came fast and shallow. Her stomach growled, an ugly, betraying sound. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. Malone walked behind her slowly, enjoying the moment. His fingers brushed the back of her neck, making her flinch. Don't be scared, girl, he murmured. You're gonna make some man very happy tonight. The crowd cheered. To them, this wasn't cruelty. It was entertainment. Clara bit her lip until blood ran down her chin. She lifted her head and searched the faces around her, dozens of them, for something human. A flicker of mercy. A sign of shame. There was nothing. Only men who saw her as an object. Then a new voice cut through the noise. 75. It was deep. Rough. Calm. The room fell quiet. Every head turned toward the door. A tall man stood there, framed by fading daylight. His skin was sunburned. Dust clung to his boots and coat. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes were steady in a way that didn't belong in a place like this. His name was Elias Thorne. He was a rancher from 10 miles outside Dry Creek. A quiet man. A widower. Known to live alone since his wife had been killed years earlier during a bandit raid. He'd sold a herd of cattle the week before, more money than he'd held in his hands in years. Enough to repair his fences. Enough to fix his roof. Or maybe enough to quiet a regret that had never left him. Malone blinked. 75, he repeated slowly. You sure about that, old man? Elias nodded once. Cash. The room erupted, half laughter, half disbelief, but no one raised the bid. Malone grinned as he took the money. She's all yours. Elias walked forward slowly. He knelt in front of Clara and untied her wrists himself, his hands careful, respectful. Then he slipped off his coat and placed it gently around her shoulders. She looked up at him. For a moment, something passed between them, fragile and uncertain. Something that looked almost like trust. Outside, the wind pushed dust along the empty street. Clara walked beside him, half numb, half terrified this was just another trick. In Dry Creek, nothing good ever came without a price. Why would a lonely rancher spend everything he had on a broken girl he didn't know? The ride out of town was silent. Clara sat behind Elias on the horse, barely touching his back. Her eyes stayed fixed on the road ahead. Fear told her not to look at him. Fear told her what always came next. After a few miles, Elias slowed near a stand of oak trees. Long shadows stretched across the grass. "Time to rest," he said. He dismounted and poured water into a metal cup, handing it to her. "Drink." She stared at him, then suddenly threw the water in his face and ran. Elias stepped back, startled. "Hey," he called, not angry, just firm. "If you run out there, you won't last a mile in this heat." She spun around, shaking. "You paid for me," she shouted. "I know what comes next." Elias wiped his face and sighed. "I'm not like those men." He tossed the water bottle at her feet. "Do what you want. You'll need that more than I will." Then he turned away. Clara stood there, heart pounding. The heat pressed down on her like a weight. Finally, she picked up the bottle and followed. By the time they reached his ranch, the sun was setting. The house was small and quiet. Elias helped her down gently. "Sit," he said. "I'll get water." She watched him move, calm, practiced, alone. When she came back from changing behind the barn, she whispered, "You paid for me. Now do it." Elias froze. "No," he said softly. "I didn't buy you. I bought your freedom." The next morning came quiet and kind. Clara slept in a bed. Ate until she was full. Helped mend fences. She smiled for the first time in weeks. But peace never lasted long in the West. Back in town, Gideon Holt was furious. "That man took what's mine," he growled. By sunset, dust rose on the horizon. Elias loaded his rifle. "Stay inside," he told Clara. The riders came fast. Gideon dismounted, smiling. "You got something that belongs to me?" Elias raised his rifle. "No." Shots rang out. Wood splintered. Horses screamed. One man fell wounded. Another fled. Then Clara stepped onto the porch with a gun in her hands. "Leave," she said. Gideon hesitated, then turned and rode away. The night came quiet again. Elias sat on the porch, bleeding. Clara brought him coffee. "You did good," he said. "I was scared," she whispered. "So was I." Weeks passed. Then months. They healed. Not perfectly. Not easily. But together. Elias never called her a debt. He called her hope. And that made all the difference. Because courage wasn't just drawing a gun. Sometimes, it was choosing kindness when the world had taught you cruelty. And out there, in the quiet places of the West, stories like that still mattered.